Hello everyone, this is Direwolf20 and welcome to an updated mod spotlight that I'm kind of treating like a brand new mod spotlight because it's been so long since I've done a spotlight on this mod. I figured I'd start from scratch and show you everything there is to know about factorization. That's right, factorization has gotten a lot of updates and changes since we've last looked at it, which was like a million years ago. There's a bunch of new blocks, a bunch of new mechanics. There's particularly two things that are kind of new that you probably have never seen before in any spotlights, and those would be the servos and the rails, and there's a bunch of cool stuff that it can do, and then there's also sockets. So we're going to get into a lot of these things, but before we get into that stuff, I should start off by introducing you guys to the basics of the mod, because it's been so long since I've done a spotlight that I really want you guys to have a full picture of everything the mod can do. So we're going to get started taking a look at some of the machines, which by the way have changed even since the last spotlight. So it's really a good idea for me to go ahead and do this spotlight and start over because so much has changed even that, it's probably very, very new to most of you. So let's get started taking a look at factorization and all its cool stuff. So as you can see, like many other mods, Factorization has now created an in-game manual that you're able to flip through and take a look at. This manual is crafted by getting your hands on a logic matrix programmer. There's several ways you can get this now. In the past, this was only found in dungeons, which is a mechanic that I don't usually like because it's completely luck-based, and you could play for a long time before finding one of these things. So luckily, Neptune Pink, the author of the mod, has decided to make it a little bit easier to come by. You can now either craft it, but you're going to need some music discs in order for that to happen, or you can go ahead and trade with villagers to get it. You can also make another one if you already have one. You can just copy it. So all you need is some dark iron and a blank logic matrix, and if you already have a logic matrix programmer, which you got from trading with a villager or in a dungeon, you can make another one. So once you've got one, you can make as many as you want, and you can even craft one regularly from music discs if you happen to stumble across some of those, or villager trading. So several ways to get your hands on a logic matrix programmer. Shouldn't be too hard to get these days. And once you've got that, you can go ahead and get the factorization manual. To go in here, you just want to go in and you can see in here it tells the navigation, scroll wheel to go through pages, and left click to go back, and escape to close the manual. So pretty cool. Right click goes back to the page you were last on. So if I right click, you can see I go back to the main page here, and you can also scroll with your mouse wheel to do all kinds of cool stuff. And you'll be able to figure out a lot of what you need to know about factorization by going through this manual, but that would kind of be a boring mod spotlight if that's all I covered. So why don't I actually show you what kind of cool stuff you can do with the mod. So the first thing you're going to want to look for is this stuff. There's actually two resources that come from factorization. That would be the silver ore and the dark iron ore. And this stuff is going to pretty much be used for everything you're going to need along with vanilla ores. Now, it's especially important that you take your silver ore and not smelt it in a regular smelting area. Like, don't throw it into a furnace or one of the other machines from some of the other mods, because if you do that, you're going to miss out on some of the extra materials you can get. In particular, your silver ore, when smelt in a slag furnace here, gives you access to lead ingots as well as silver ingots. And if you smelt other ores in here, you have a better chance to get some stuff. So you can see the first time through we got 2 lead ingots, this time we got 1. So the benefit you get is a little bit randomized. However, the downside to the slag furnace is it will use twice as much fuel. You'll notice that we are about to hit our 4th processing of this thing, and we're about to use up another piece of coal. So you get 4 smeltings out of a piece of coal instead of the usual 8 that you would get out of a regular furnace. But you do get bonus materials. And if you look in your factorization manual here, you can find that you get bonus outputs. So for example, sometimes you'll get some stone or some dirt or some other stuff that you might get, or you might double your iron ore if you go through the ore doubling process that factorization has available for you. So the slag furnace is definitely a good way to get started processing some of your stuff. So two familiar machines that you might know about are the stamper and the packager. These guys look pretty similar, as you can tell, but they have two slightly different operations. The stamper, as you can see here, indicates that it will craft a single item by itself. So there's a lot of different things that this can be used for. For example, if you've got a stack of oak wood and you want to quickly turn it into oak wood planks, easily done. It's the same process as if you had placed a piece of item in your crafting table by itself and pulled it out. That's all it can really do. So you can, throw stone in there to get buttons, and you can throw bones in there to get bone meal. So that kind of thing. Nice. The stamper is pretty useful for some basic materials like that. Now, for some more advanced stuff, you might want to take a look at the packager. This guy's pretty cool. What he can do is craft in a 4 pattern, so 2x2, or an all 9 grid, so a 3x3 grid pattern. So, for example, with stone, if you craft that into a 2x2, you get stone bricks, and with oak wood planks, you get crafting tables. Cool? So if we were to toss oak wood planks in there, we should get crafting tables. And if you place stone in there, you'll wind up getting crafting the bricks like that. And the same can be said for a 3x3 pattern. So if you, for example, throw iron in there, you should get iron blocks because it'll craft in a 3x3 pattern. Pretty neat. The only other thing to note here is that these machines do emit a redstone pulse every time they craft. So that's a pretty nice way of keeping track of when things are crafting and what's going on. You can use that for counting, or you can use that to initiate pulling items out of the inventory. You can insert items to the top and sides, and you can extract items only from the bottom. Next up, we've got barrels. For the cheap cost of just a few pieces of wood and a wood slab, and you can use any type of wood you want, you can get these nifty gadgets that can store 64 stacks of items. So that's 16 by 64 if you're talking about ender pearls and eggs, 64 times 64 for things like cobblestone and wood, that kind of stuff. All you got to do to interact with them is right-click to place an item in. To get an item out is real easy. Shift left click pulls out a single item, and a regular left click pulls out a stack of items. But it will leave one item behind just to make sure you don't pull out the very last item that's in there. So as you can imagine, this is definitely a useful storage tool. Now there's a couple other options you've got. For example, you've got the hopping spruce barrel. This guy will act like a hopper and a barrel in one. All you got to do is stick the barrel on top of some inventory, like so, and place some items into it. And it'll go ahead and hop up and down, dropping items down, just like it was a hopper. Your next option here is the silky spruce barrel. This guy is pretty nifty. What he can do is if you go ahead, oh, by the way, double right click will empty all the items of your inventory into there. The silky spruce barrel, when picked up with a silk touch pickaxe, like so, will retain its contents. Cool. And we can see here that this silk barrel contains some items. Nifty. And if we go ahead and place it back down, it still contains its contents. So that silky barrel is definitely useful if you want to be able to pick up and move items around. And then finally, we've got the sticky barrel here. This guy will prevent items from completely emptying the barrel when pulled out with automation. So if you have a hopper underneath, for example, so let's do this as a demonstration. I'll grab just a few pieces of this stuff. By the way, it's the bottom that you pull out from and the sides and top that you can insert items into. Let's just grab ourselves a hopper. Stick it on there, and a chest. So what this guy does is he will pull out all but one item because of the hopper, because he's a sticky guy. The sticky ones are made with slime balls, by the way. And that's pretty much the 4 different types of barrels that are available. One more note, by the way, about the hopping barrel. He can also, like a hopper, pull items out of the inventory above him. Sweet. Alright guys, the next gadget I want to show you I think is pretty new. It's called the parasive, and what it can do is basically filter inventory transfers. So basically imagine that this parasive here can filter what's being pulled out of the chest on the top into the hopper in the bottom. So with a regular hopper, right, if we had a hopper like here and we had a chest on top, anything and anything that you put into this chest will start to go filtered into the hopper, right, and then placed in whatever inventory is below it. So it'll pull out cobble, it'll pull out dirt, whatever you want, it'll all land in here. What the parasive does is it interfaces between the hopper and the chest, and this will work with anything. So you can hook up pipes to the side of it from Buildcraft, or you can hook up thermal expansion tubes, whatever you want, and you can get things pulled out of the sides of the parasive instead of the chest. And the parasive acts like a filter. So for example, if I placed dirt in the parasive slot here, only dirt will be allowed to pull out of the chest on the top. See? All the dirt's getting pulled out, the cobble is not, and it's all going through the hopper into the chest below, exactly as you would expect. So think of this as just an intermediary filter between the chest and the hopper, or whatever else is accessing the inventory. And what's cool is now you can access this inventory above from all 5 sides of the parasive, the 5 other sides, that is. Okay, it's important how you place the parasive. Make sure to place it, against the chest. So if you're going to do something, the way I recommend doing it is like coming down here and clicking upwards like that, so that'll make sure it's working, right? And you can test this by doing this and see that everything's working correctly. Cool. Now, if you want, you can do a little bit more than just filter like this. How else can we filter? Well, the top and bottom slots here are pretty important. They actually are tied together, so there's only 4 filters, not 8. You can filter across the 4 top slots, and if you just filter like that, it'll only filter that item, right? So if you said like just dirt, then only dirt's going to be filtered. The other way you can filter is with metadata. So you can combine, for example, I've got a pick here which is completely repaired, and another pick that only has 4 damage on it. Okay, so that pick is going to go ahead and what we're going to have here by placing one on the top and the one on the bottom, anything that falls within the range of damage here will apply to the parasive. So anything between 0 and 4 damage will be applied, and you can do this however you want. So if you want to have like an almost broken pick or something like that, just fine, right? Or if you only want to have like nearly broken picks, that'll also work. So for now, a fully repaired pick or a pick with up to 4 damage will be filtered out. This pick has 26 damage on it. He's not going to get pulled out because 26 does not fall in the range of 0 to 4. However, if I had a pick that had, for example, 2 damage on it, that one will get pulled out. See? And it went into the chest below. And if we had a fully repaired pick, that one should also go through. Cool. You'll note here inside the parasiv's entry within the factorization manual that if 2 items with text written on them are compared, then all similar items with or without matching text may pass. So that's, for example, books, like enchanted books, right? So if you put like just a looting book in here, then only looting 3 or just, that one looting type will go through. But if you put 2 enchanted books in the same column, then what will happen is all enchanted books will be allowed through. So there's a couple different things you can do with this. The last thing that we'll take a look at here is to do with redstone. So all you have to do to get this comparator set up, throw a comparator here facing a line of redstone dust, and we'll see how this works. What you can do is you can set up a range with which to output a signal. So you can say between 16 and 32 cobblestone, output a redstone signal based on how much cobblestone is in the chest. So for now, we have no cobblestone in the chest, and we'll see that there's no redstone emitted. With just 1 cobblestone in the chest, it'll emit a signal strength of 1, indicating that there's some cobblestone in there, but it's below that level 16. And anything below 16 will continue to emit a redstone signal strength of 1. However, if we bump this guy up to 16 or 17, for example, it'll start to get a little bit stronger. Let's see, 18, maybe 19 to get up there. There we go. Now we've got a signal strength of 2. Cool. And as we get higher and higher in the numbers there, it's going to continue to emit more and more redstone signal, allowing for some stronger signals to be emitted. There we go. All the way up to 32. Cool. So now we've got a nice strong signal because we've hit that 32, and you're not going to get any better than 32 because that's the bottom limit. So you can detect how much of an item is inside a chest using the parasive as well. Next up, let's talk about the electricity system within factorization. So there's a lot of ways you can go ahead and get started with this. There's a couple ways to generate some power and then some ways to transfer it, and then we'll look at some of the machines that you can use to get started. So let's first off go with the creation of power. So to get started, first you're going to need some water. And then you're going to need a water boiler. And in order to get that, you just place this guy right here. And you'll see the recipe is pretty easy to make. And you might have noticed that it's filling up its internal buffer of water. So some water is getting pulled up into the water boiler. That's a good sign that you've done something right. Now that it's starting to get water, we need to go ahead and start heating up that water. And we have to turn that heat up water into steam so that the steam turbine can go ahead and start spinning. So to get this thing heated up, your best bet is to make some mirrors. Cool. Go ahead and place the mirrors down, and they'll automatically orient towards the water collector block there. Okay, so you've got your water boiler. These guys are automatically doing what they're supposed to do, and you'll be able to, as you can see, get a decent amount of mirrors set up, and you'll have a pretty good time. You'll know that everything's working because you've got this mirrors automatically orienting towards the guy. And once this thing has enough mirrors pointing at it, the sunlight will start to heat up the water and spin the steam turbine. Now this thing is producing power from the sunlight. Go ahead and make yourself a charge meter. As you can see here, it's pretty easy to make, and you should be able to measure the charge inside of a block. So we can see there's 128 charge in here. It's currently got a little bit of steam going on, and the fan speed is spinning pretty well. Nice. If you want to go ahead and transfer this charge somewhere, go ahead and run some lead wire. It's really easy to craft, just a few pieces of lead. Now to get it to go around a corner, you have to actually click on the corner here, and sometimes it's a little bit hard to get, but you'll manage to figure it out, and then it can go ahead and run pretty well. Neat. I'm going to go ahead, as you can see here, these mirrors are no longer facing this block because there was something line of sight blocking it, so we went ahead and removed those. Now you can run your wire. What you'll notice is that the charge is going to be pretty consistent across the whole system. It'll balance itself out and try and remain pretty stable. So now we've got a charge of 37 balanced across this whole system. To store power, you're going to want to make yourself either a battery, as you can see here. Now the thing to remember about batteries is that they come pre-charged. So you can craft a fully charged battery. All it requires is some lead and iron and some sulfuric acid, which is water, coal, and gunpowder. So if you want, you can go ahead and craft yourself some battery blocks. They'll come fully charged ahead of time. You can't craft ones that aren't fully charged. What you can do is place it down. I'll start off with a low charge one, and you'll notice here that when you go ahead and read the measure, it's going to tell you how much storage there is. So that quickly filled up the storage based on the charge. You'll see here the charge numbers dropped across the network, and it quickly filled up the battery. Neat. You can also go ahead and get yourself a Leyden jar. These guys, which when you craft them do start off empty, they aren't fully charged when you craft them there. What you can see here is this thing will store a massive amount of power. So you can see here it's quickly building up charge, and it's going to need a lot of charge before it can go ahead and actually start storing the energy it's got. So give it a while to charge up there. Another option to heat up your water boiler if you don't want to use the sunlight method is to go ahead and get yourself this nifty gadget, the calorimetric burner. This guy can burn up pretty much any food sources. All you have to do is place it next to the water boiler here, and then we'll place our steam turbine on top. You'll notice it's not spinning yet, and then you just have to get some food into there. The better quality food, the better it's going to run, and the faster it's going to operate, and all that kind of good stuff. So you can see here, you can go ahead and drop some steak in there. It can only hold a few pieces at a time, and once we did that, it started spinning up. Nice. We can see also that you can go ahead and use hoppers or hopping barrels to kind of keep everything working the way you want so that it constantly has a good supply of steak. Cool. Now we can go ahead and run some charge off this guy, and hopefully we can get this whole system working. So what can we do with this nifty gadget? Well, one thing that we can do with some of this power is use it to charge up our furnaces. So if you have what's this block right here referred to as a furnace heater, you can heat up your furnace adjacent to this thing, and you can toss items in and it'll go ahead and smelt. So let's go ahead and get some silver ore, for example. You'll notice the furnace thing blinking, and it's going to go ahead and process the silver ore using the power from your generation system here rather than using coal. Neat. You can also power a mixer, which has a whole host of different recipes and stuff that you can do with things. The mixer is going to be very useful for creating some stuff down the line, especially as related to shapeless recipes. So anything that has a shapeless crafting recipe can go into a mixer. And I'll show you what's involved with the automated ore processing system in just a minute here, but just keep in mind that pretty much anything can go into a mixer. So for example, a shapeless crafting recipe of these guys should work out just fine. Ah, there it goes. Cool. And you'll notice that it automatically crafts inside the mixer. Cool. Hooray, mushroom soup. Now the next thing I want to show you, now that we've covered the basic parts of machines and some of the electricity generation, are sockets. Now some sockets require electricity, other sockets do not. So that's why I wanted to make sure you saw how to make electricity first. Let's see what you can do with sockets. Sockets are kind of a neat multi-purpose block that can hold machine parts. And these socket parts can plug into the socket block to do different things. Let's get a demonstration going. So first things first, let's get ourselves a socket block. So one of the very useful things that sockets can do is you can install what's called a robotic arm. Now this thing is a little bit expensive to craft. You're going to need some dark iron, and you're also going to need one of these logic matrix controllers, which is requiring that logic matrix programmer. But once you've got that nifty gadget, what you can do is you can use this robotic arm to simulate a right click. So a good example might be a door. If you right click a door, it opens. And if you right-click a door again, it closes. So anytime that this block here receives a redstone signal, it's going to simulate a right-click. Now, that might sound pretty cool, but there's even more you can do with it. If you have an inventory behind the right-click ability here, what it'll do is it'll automatically pull an item out of that inventory and use it to do the right-clicking. So what do I mean, for example? Well, what if we had a hoe in here, and we tossed it in there, and then we applied a redstone signal. Ta-da! It uses the hoe. Nice. And it's going to go ahead and use whatever it can find to do whatever it can think to do. So for example, if I've got that guy right there, let's grab a few because I know he's going to run away, and some shears. And we toss the shears in here. Ta-da! The shears were used from the chest, not the hoe. Because it tried to use the hoe, it failed because the land was already tilled, so then it tried and moved on to the shears, and we're able to do that. Nifty. So anything that's behind here will get right-clicked. Without a chest behind, it'll just do a simple player right-click. So in theory, I should even be able to do something like that. Neat. Now the next thing I want to show you doesn't require a direct redstone signal, and it also requires an extra thing to be placed down first. This is a lacerator. In order to make it, you need to place a motor down and then a diamond cutting head onto the motor. Cool. Now any block placed in front of this thing will start to get ground up. However, you do need some power run into this thing. So let's run some power into there, and you'll note that now it's going to run. Neat. So this thing will automatically chew up the block in front of it and break it. Cool. And it'll also break it down. So cobblestone will get turned into, for example, gravel, and gravel will get turned into sand. Neat. Don't think sand gets turned into anything special. Nope. But what you can do, for example, is get some ore. So for example, if I threw some gold ore down in front of this thing, it's going to go ahead and chew up the gold ore and turn it into dirty gold gravel. Don't stand in front of it, by the way, because that would hurt a lot, and you're going to die pretty quick. Neat. So you can go ahead and place down individual items at a time, but there is one special block that won't ever get destroyed by this, and that is a barrel. Barrels won't get destroyed by this gadget right here, but instead it'll automatically process whatever blocks are inside the barrel. So you'll notice here that the gold ore will get broken down instead of the barrel itself. Cool. So we've got some dirty gold gravel. What can we do with this stuff? Well, I'll show you. You can either smelt this down to get a piece of gold. You can throw it into a slag furnace, which will give you a piece of gold. 110% chance, by the way, so there's a 10% chance it'll double that gold. And you have a 20% chance of getting dirt. Neat. Or what you can do is you can craft it with a water bucket. But remember I told you any shapeless crafting can be done inside a mixer? That's right. So go ahead and throw a water bucket in there. Go ahead and throw some dirty gold gravel in there, and let's see what happens. Sweet! I got 8 clean gold gravel. Very cool. So what can I do with this stuff, you ask? Well, I could either smelt it into gold, not too exciting, or I can throw it into a slag furnace, and that will give me reduced gold chunks, 125% on each side. So there's a good chance you'll get double this, and let's see what we get. So if we grab ourselves a slag furnace, and we grab ourselves the heater, just because I don't want to use any coal, and heaters are cool, we can go ahead and throw this clean gravel in there. So I've got 8 clean gold gravel. Let's see what we get. There we go. Looks like in total we got 13 reduced gold chunks. So we got even more than 50% out of that. So we did pretty well with that, based on luck. We got a little lucky with it, I guess. And so now we've got 13 reduced gold chunks. Sweet. From here, we could either toss these guys and get them smelted, or we could go one step further and get ourselves a crystallizer. Now that is going to require some aqua regia, which is sulfuric acid netherrack powder, which you can get from lacerating netherrack, and then you're also going to need to get yourself a fire charge. You could, of course, substitute blaze rod here too. The good news about this stuff is it doesn't get used up. Now the crystallizer goes down and it needs to be placed next to a heater. You can get your aqua regia stuff and throw it into the bottom there, and then you can go ahead and throw your reduced gold chunks in here. And the good news is it'll go 5 at a time. The bad news is this takes a little while, like about 15 real life minutes. So walk away, get something to drink, come back, and what you'll wind up with is about 120% crystalline gold. So what we should wind up with here is about 6 or 7 pieces of gold out of this. So overall, we should get about triple our ore if we go through the whole process. Or you can stop at any point along the way once you feel you've got enough ore in your hands. Now the next socket part is especially cool. This guy is called the item shifter. Dun dun dun. There we go. What this does is it transfers items between two inventories, be it a minecart or a furnace or pretty much anything that has an inventory, it'll transfer items between. It's like a hopper on steroids because it has a crazy interface. If you right-click it with a logic matrix programmer, you can configure all kinds of important stuff, including the flow direction. Do you want to export from the back or import to the back? Ooh, good question. Do you want to pulse some amount, stream a single item, or pulse an exact amount, how much of that amount, and the target slot that it's going to land in? Let's go through each of these options. So I've got two empty chests here, and by default the settings are as shown. Now I'm going to set it to export from back and stream single item, because stream single item is the easiest thing to demonstrate. Okay, all we have to do is place items in the chest here. Now what it's going to do is it's going to stream the items, export from back. So behind the socket here, it's going to go ahead and take the items and it's going to export from behind into the item in front. Okay, so when a redstone signal is applied, it's going to start pulling items out one at a time. So it's the opposite of a hopper in that it requires a redstone signal to operate instead of stopping when a redstone signal is applied. When the redstone signal is off, it's not going to run, as you can see. Pretty cool. Now, if you want to reverse that, all you have to do is click this button, Import to Back. And now it's just going to do the opposite. It's going to import items out of the inventory in front of it and suck them into the chest in the back. Cool. Now that's pretty straightforward. The cool thing is that you can change the target slot. So let's set it back to export mode. Okay, it's exporting there. Let's get it to stop for a minute. And we're going to set this guy, instead of exporting to any slot, we're going to tell it to export to slot 9. Cool. What's that going to do? It's going to start filling up slot 9 instead of the first slot available. This is especially powerful in some other machines that have different inventory slots and you want to control where an item lands. Very, very useful. So you can go ahead and make sure it lands into the right slot in some advanced machines or whatever you want. Now, the other two settings here that you might want to pay attention to are these guys right in the middle. You can, instead of just streaming a single item, you can pulse an exact amount. What that's going to do is it's going to pull out an exact amount of items. So for this demonstration, I'm going to do 21 items. So whenever I apply a redstone pulse here, okay, it's going to pull out 21 items. Cool. If I pulse it again, note that it pulled out another 21 items. Neat. And if I pulse it yet a third time, oh, there weren't 21 items, so it didn't do anything. Because we told it to pulse an exact amount, it's only going to pull out 21 items. If those 21 items aren't available, it's not going to pull them out. Now, if you want it to pull out those 19 items, you can switch it to pulse some amount. What this is going to do is, just like the previous mode, it'll pull 21 items at a time. There we go. There we go. And this time it'll grab the last remaining 19. Even though it didn't exactly match, it pulled 21 or less. Cool? Now in pulse mode, you have to apply a redstone signal every time you want to pull an item, where in stream mode, you can leave a steady redstone signal and it'll pull one item at a time. You might have noticed that when we changed it to stream single item, it changed the amount. You cannot modify the amounts in any way in stream mode, but you can in the pulse exact or some amount mode. But in the stream mode, it's always going to pull one item at a time. Do you want to filter this? Well, unfortunately, you can't, unless of course you use the parasive. That's right, you could hook this up to a parasive, and then you could specify to only pull out copper, or only pull out cobblestone, or only pull out dirt, whatever you want to do. So parasive plus this block, awesome combination. The next block here is the pressurizer. This guy is pretty nifty. Check this out. Make sure you give it some power, and it's going to go ahead and pull things towards it. Cool. There it goes. Nice. And if it is pulling things towards it, it'll automatically deposit them in the inventory behind once it manages to get sucked inwards. That is neat. You can adjust the speed, and of course keep in mind that the higher the speed, the more energy it's probably going to use, and it might even pull in players and entities, so watch out for that. Yikes. Go ahead and turn that thing off to make sure that you don't have any problems. Now what you can also do is do when sucks true, switch that to false, and instead it's going to start blowing items. So items will be blown away. Neato. Hooray! The only other thing to note with the blowing mode is if you happen to have items in the inventory behind, it'll start shooting those items out occasionally and start pushing them out. Pretty neat. I could come up with a pretty cool item transfer system with this, one in sucking mode and one blow mode. That would be awesome. All right. You should also note that there's a method of transferring liquids from one inventory to a tank or from a source block to a tank. Unfortunately, I don't have any tanks installed right now because I'm doing this Spotlight in 1.7.10, and there's not too many mods updated to that just yet, so we'll have to check that out at another time. But just note that there is this block here that can transfer liquids into a tank. Alright guys, I think that's going to have to wrap up part 1 of the mod spotlight. Now, in preparation of part 2, I'm ready to show you this nifty multi-block here, which is the compression crafter. It's very cool. I'll be showing that to you in part 2. And in part 2, we'll also be getting into one of the most exciting parts of the mod, in my opinion, which is servos. That's right, servos gets its own spotlight pretty much because it's a super complicated but super automated way to do stuff. So it's a nifty little robotic rail system. It's a little robot that travels on rails. You guys have seen little pieces of it throughout some of my mods, playing on Forgecraft and whatnot, but it's pretty much almost done at this point, or at least just has a ton more stuff than you've seen in the past. So we are going to see a full serving of what servos can do for us. So for now, this is Direwolf20 signing off. Hope you enjoyed part 1 of Factorization. Lots to check out with servos. Believe me, it's going to be a long episode while we check out all the things that servos can do. And we'll probably also touch on the compression crafter, as well as 1 or 2 other things that we didn't get to in part 1. Alright guys, Direwolf20 signing off. Take it easy.